Just as we were about to leave, Ethan called out to me, suggesting I wear that lake blue coat again. I shouted back, asking him to come help me find it. He was rummaging through the closet when his face suddenly went pale, and he turned to look at me. He finally remembered that the person who owned a light blue coat wasn't me. That careless slip-up sent Ethan into an instant panic. He didn't even have the strength to reach out and stop me. I glanced at the closet he had been digging through and found the whole situation increasingly laughable. As I turned to leave, he finally reached out a second time and managed to grab my arm. In his panic, his voice trembled so much that his words were fragmented and broken. I had to listen carefully to understand what he was saying. He said, "Ava, I admit everything. I'm in the wrong. But can we just finish what we need to do today first, please?" On the coffee table outside the bedroom lay the documents I had organized for our marriage license application. If I hadn't looked out the window right before we left and seen the tree branches swaying in the wind, I wouldn't have thought to change into a thicker coat, and Ethan wouldn't have stood by the door, so naturally telling me, "Just wear that lake blue coat again. It really suits your complexion." And so, this seemingly smooth path to marriage was cut short right at the finish line. Looking at Ethan, who was shaking with fear, I suddenly wondered where he found the audacity to see another woman behind my back. Or perhaps he had always been this bold, and his fear now was just a performance for my benefit. I shook off his hand, laughing at the fact that even now, he was still dreaming of a happy ending. I mocked him. "Ethan, discovering your infidelity and us getting a marriage license are not two unrelated events. You cheated, so I cannot swallow my disgust and continue to be with you." He suddenly lost all his strength and collapsed to his knees, amid the sound of Ethan slapping his own face in remorse. I walked to the coffee table and tore the prepared documents into pieces, one by one. I took the photos with the red background, the ones I had happily dragged him to take, and tore them up too, tossing them into the trash can. We had put so much effort into taking them, thinking they would be on our marriage certificate for a lifetime, striving for perfection in every aspect. In the end, I threw them away without a shred of pity, just like how, when I was wholeheartedly planning to walk into a marriage with him, he was dating a woman who loved wearing lake blue coats. In that moment, he had thrown my sincere heart into the trash, too. Still kneeling, he began to pick up the torn pieces one by one. He acted as if he was in more pain than I was. He brought up how we had visited several studios, taken multiple versions, and finally chose the one with the brightest smiles. He mentioned that today's date was one we had picked out at the beginning of the year, a day we had looked forward to for so long. While he played the emotional card, I continued to tear apart his mask of hypocrisy. "Ethan, I am not the one who turned all of this into a joke." He claimed that everything we had was hard-won, yet he had never cut off contact with that woman. I hadn't missed the word again when he told me to wear the coat. For him to recall it so vividly and say it so naturally, he must have seen it very recently. The moment I heard lake blue coat, I could already guess what Ethan had been doing behind my back. I simply recalled his business trip 3 days ago. Perhaps the business trip was a lie, and the date with that woman was the truth. The gifts he brought back for me weren't thoughtful souvenirs, but compensation bought out of guilt. When his friend called, Ethan was still kneeling at my feet, clutching my pant leg and begging for forgiveness. Before I could say anything, a chaotic chorus of congratulations erupted from the other end of the line. "Ava, happy marriage license day. Ethan, congrats on finally locking down the beauty. We've already booked the venue and are waiting for you guys. When are you coming over?" I held the phone, which was on speaker, to Ethan's mouth, waiting for him to explain the situation. He looked at me for a long time. The laughter and blessings from the phone were unceasing. Everyone sounded more excited and thrilled than the two of us involved. After a long silence, Ethan only said one word, "Thanks." From the other end came repeated replies. "We'll wait for you then. Don't make us wait too long." After I hung up, I kicked Ethan, and he finally let go of my leg. I said, "Let's go. Go explain this clearly to our friends." He started begging again. "Ava, as long as you agree, everything can still proceed exactly as everyone expects." I rejected his idea. "Not everyone. Ethan, I told you I don't want to marry you anymore. You know me, that wasn't a joke." I asked him, "Do you want to bring that woman along? If the three of us show up together, no one will need an explanation. Everyone will understand exactly what's going on. He silently denied my suggestion. I continued. Why don't you go get a license with that woman? We can treat today's occasion as a celebration for the two of you. I watched as he began bowing to me repeatedly like a madman. Ava, I admit my mistakes. I accept all of it. Just don't punish me like this. You see, it's confusing who this man actually loves. He wants to marry me, yet he loves another woman outside of our relationship. I kindly offered to facilitate his other romance, yet he never once considered marrying that woman. I went alone to the celebration banquet our friends had prepared for us. The moment I pushed the door open, everyone stood at the entrance, extending their hands toward me. Ava, come on. Let us see what your marriage certificate looks like. I took the wedding candies I had bought in advance out of my pocket and distributed them into their hands. Everyone's eyes were still glued to the bag at my side, waiting for me to take out the thing they wanted to see most. When I finished distributing the candy, I spread my hands. Just candy. There's nothing else. The friend standing at the front asked in confusion. How is that possible? I looked up. At the end of the crowd, they had put up a Happy Registration Day banner on the wall. I walked over, tore down the word registration, and stood there. Ethan and I broke up. You can still wish me happiness, though. The lively atmosphere instantly turned dead silent. Everyone stared at me, wondering if I was joking. Someone even ran outside to see if Ethan was hiding, playing along with a prank. I said nothing more. I simply and silently peeled off all the small double happiness stickers attached to the fruit platters. Only when the last sticker was peeled off did someone ask me, why did you break up? I had been dating Ethan for 7 years. It seemed like he had passed every test. No one expected a problem to arise right at the moment of legalizing the marriage. Even they couldn't imagine what kind of issue could cause Ethan and me to fall apart to this extent at this stage. I told them. Ethan fell in love with another woman. Immediately, I heard voices of denial. Ava, you know better than us that the person Ethan loves most is you. I suddenly laughed out loud. Is that so? That didn't stop him from liking another woman at the same time. Someone took the opportunity to call Ethan. His phone wasn't off, but he wouldn't answer. As time passed, no one jumped out to say it was just a joke. No one questioned the truth of the matter anymore. Everyone tacitly sat back in their seats, until someone asked, what kind of woman is she? That broke the silence in the room. I shook my head. I don't know much. I only know she's a woman who likes to wear a light blue coat. From start to finish, I never questioned Ethan about the woman. When they started didn't matter. How much they loved each other didn't matter. Ethan's infidelity to our relationship was what mattered. So, the moment I caught that clue, I knew things between Ethan and me were over. I heard one of Ethan's friends ask in confusion, what color is lake blue? I laughed at him. Go get a girlfriend. Let her teach you. All these years with Ethan, he couldn't distinguish colors around me. Whatever color clothes I bought, to him, they were only ever dark or light. As for blue, he would only say dark blue or light blue. Yet, under another woman's tutelage, he had learned what lake blue was. So, in that one sentence from Ethan, I heard too much terrifyingly valid information. I saw Ethan on my way back. He was waiting at the entrance of my apartment complex, just like usual. At this time last night, he had spotted my car from a distance and waved at me frantically. The first thing he said when he saw me was, Ava, just one more day, and you'll officially be my wife. He pointed to the tree next to him. It has waited with me for you for countless nights. Tomorrow, we have to put a big red flower on it, too. On the way back, he kept planning which items needed the double happiness stickers he had bought. Looking back at the journey, I realized how hard it had been to persist through these 7 years. So, as Ethan spoke, he suddenly started crying uncontrollably. He said these were tears of joy, and then he took out the documents again and again to check them. He endlessly planned with me what we would do after getting the license, hold hands and brag to our friends that we had stepped into the next stage of life before them, have a candlelight dinner, watch a movie, and distribute our wedding candy to passers-by. Last night he planned everything, but today, nothing happened. When he approached my car, he knocked on the window. I didn't pay attention to him. My best friend rolled down the rear window, stuck her head out, and asked him, Ethan, what exactly does that lake blue coat look like? Among the people present today, no one was wearing lake blue. So when I left, My friend insisted on coming back with me. She said she wanted to ask Ethan personally what style of coat made him so unforgettable. She also predicted with certainty that she would see Ethan at my place. She had guessed everything. But now, Ethan refused to discuss the topic. Through the car window, Ethan told me, "Ava, I've taken care of everything." So, to him, that woman had become a past that could be turned over. After freshening up, my friend and I went back downstairs to celebrate my singleness. Just like when my friend stuck the small double happiness sticker I had peeled off into my palm and told me, "God letting you know about this before you sign the papers isn't a bad thing. You not falling apart or trying to end your life over this isn't a bad thing either." In the bleak future she imagined, if I had bad luck, I might have lived a chaotic life tormented by a mistress. So she said, "Ava, discovering it now is a good thing." Thus, the occasion to celebrate the marriage license turned into a banquet celebrating my return to singlehood. Everyone began to celebrate my early escape from misery. When we went downstairs, Ethan was still waiting. He had been performing this meaningless wait all day. When he came up wanting to talk to me, my friend decisively stepped between us. Compared to Ethan's bursting desire to explain, I had nothing to say to him. My friend and I went for a meal and watched a movie. As we walked out with the crowd, my friend suddenly pulled out the handful of candy I had given her from her pocket. She placed one in my palm. "Ava, I thought you would secretly cry in the darkness of the movie theater, but you watched the whole thing seriously. Happy singleness." I couldn't find a reason to cry over this. What Ethan did left no room for forgiveness. The only thing I could do was cut my losses immediately. I still agreed with my friend's perspective. It was good that this happened before the legal commitment. It was much better than discovering it later and having a messy fallout just to get a divorce. Walking out of the theater, my friend waved to Ethan, who was standing under a tree in the distance. This was the first friendly signal she had shown Ethan tonight. He practically jogged over. When he stood in front of me, my friend handed him a candy too. "It's a good day for Ava returning to the single life. Have some of the joy." Ethan wouldn't take it, so my friend threw it directly at him, and he reflexively caught it. When we left, Ethan stood there looking like he had lost his soul. I knew why he reacted that way. In the candy distribution scenario he had designed, there was a step like this. The last candy in our hands was meant for each other. We were supposed to unwrap it for each other and celebrate our marriage. He received my candy, but it was to celebrate my leaving him. Passing a clothing store, my gaze was drawn to a light blue coat displayed in the window. Not just me, but my friend too. That's why she pointed at the coat and said, "Let's go in and take a look." Inside, we found several coats of the same color. I had no interest in trying them on. My friend, however, specifically picked the light blue ones to try. There were subtle differences in style, and the shop assistant kept praising them endlessly. Finally, my friend said, "Professional matters should be left to the professionals." So, she pushed open the door and called Ethan in from outside. When I told my friend how I discovered Ethan's affair, specifically mentioning that sentence he said, she had been silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "Ethan knows quite a lot. That was why she called him a professional today." Like a game of hide and seek, Ethan hid in obscure places, but my friend could always spot him at a glance. Ethan already knew that my friend's kindness wasn't a good sign for him. Plus, the lake blue on her was glaringly obvious. He could guess what she wanted him for. So, he merely exposed himself under the streetlights, but refused to come closer. My friend didn't intend to let him off. She pointed at him. "Wait for me right there." Then, she tried on the coats one by one, walking to the door each time to show Ethan. In the end, she asked him, "Ethan, which one actually suits my complexion?" Under the lights, I saw Ethan's pale face and bloodless lips, accompanied, presumably, by numbness in his limbs and a blank mind. Exactly the same reaction I had when I heard that sentence. When we went back, Ethan didn't follow us anymore. I declined my friend's offer to stay with me, pushing open the door. The dim room was quiet, as if nothing had happened. But in the night Ethan and I had planned, it should have been brightly lit and full of laughter. As I sat at the vanity to remove my makeup, I noticed the gift Ethan had left there. Early this morning, when I was coordinating my outfit, he had run into the bedroom. He had looked mysterious, telling me to wait until I discovered the surprise he had for me. He placed it in a very obvious spot. But he revealed his hand so quickly in his moment of pride that I never got the chance to look at the surprise. The day passed in the rush of the breakup, and this mysterious gift was completely forgotten by me. I opened it. A beautifully crafted golden scepter lay quietly in the velvet box. I knew the reason Ethan gave me a golden scepter. One day, my friend had shown me a picture like this and told me the meaning of the scepter. Whoever holds the scepter, I follow. I didn't take it seriously, but Ethan did. Ethan had intended to hand his entire life over to me. All the times in his life when Ethan was most easily swayed, he spent them on me. The first time was when he came back one day, and I noticed he had removed a mole on his face. When asked, I learned a colleague casually mentioned that the mole was bad for me, so he used his lunch break to get it removed. The second time was when choosing the date for the marriage license. Ethan wanted it as soon as possible, but a friend mentioned my lucky month, so Ethan pushed the date to the end of the year. Thinking about it this way, he seemed to have loved me very much once, but he didn't love only me. The next morning, I saw Ethan waiting downstairs early. If everything had gone smoothly, we would have visited both our parents today. Instead, I just made a phone call telling my parents the marriage was off, because I wasn't the one who caused this mess. Resolving it was simple for me. When Ethan saw me, he grabbed bags of items from the car to welcome me. He said, "Ava, I wronged you." Now that last night was over, when he talked about apologies, he no longer forced me to swallow my disgust. I couldn't ignore the dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept well last night either. I didn't take his things, just mentioned the item he left on the vanity. I didn't even have the mood to go upstairs and get it for him. I said, "Ethan, I'll mail it back to you when I find the time." He hurriedly explained that it was a gift for me. I just found his anxiety and panic slightly ridiculous. I know, but I can't manage a household with someone like you. So, I am refusing the right to rule that you are handing me. He repeatedly promised me he would change and said he had already taken action. What was this so-called action? Just immediately saying goodbye to that woman after I discovered the untimely affair. He was actually no different from last night, planning to use just a little bit of action to win me back. Yesterday it was kneeling and apologizing. Today it was just a few words of apology and some inexpensive gifts. Ethan, not every mistake gets a second chance. Ethan sat next to me and ate breakfast with me, because we came here often. The owner habitually placed my porridge on Ethan's side. Sharing a spoon and a bowl of porridge was our previous custom. He expertly picked out the beans from the bowl one by one. This was a quirk of mine Ethan discovered after we got together. I loved porridge made with beans, but I hated eating the beans themselves. At the time, he laughed at me. "Ava, your parents must have really spoiled you to give you such a habit. It's okay. I'll spoil you too." Then, he started picking out beans for me. And later on, he always did it perfectly. I asked Ethan to pass the porridge. He ignored me, burying his head in the task of picking beans. I told him, "Ethan, give it up. Even after you pick out the beans, I won't drink that bowl of porridge." He didn't stop, just told me not to punish my stomach. He brought up the very first time he picked beans for me. He hadn't done it cleanly, and I ended up eating one. I spat it out with a look of distress, and he said I looked like a pea shooter from a video game. I thought he was boring and turned to look out the window, where my gaze was drawn to a woman in a light blue coat. From last night to today, I seemed to always spot the existence of light blue coats instantly. She was staring right at me, at Ethan, or perhaps looking past us. Then, I saw her pick up her phone and dial a number. Just as Ethan handed me the porridge, I heard his phone ring. In that moment, I finally knew exactly what style of light blue coat Ethan couldn't forget. After Ethan hung up, she dialed again. Once more, I saw Ethan's pale face, and even a sheen of sweat appearing on his forehead. Sometimes, things happen by sheer coincidence, like finding out about Ethan's new romance minutes before getting married. Like my friend trying on that exact style of coat yesterday. My gaze hadn't been entirely on Ethan that day. I had only looked over involuntarily when my friend spoke her last sentence. So, I assumed Ethan's fear came from my friend replicating the terror of the moment I caught his slip-up. It turned out the bigger reason was that by sheer luck, my friend had tried on the exact same style. And coincidentally, my friend thought it looked good too, and ended up asking Ethan that question while wearing it. What was he thinking in that moment? Did he think my luck was too good? That all the answers were separated from me by a thin sheet of paper, and I only needed to poke it lightly to see everything. After hanging up the third time, Ethan finally noticed the woman standing outside the window. My attention had already shifted to the breakfast in front of me. The porridge Ethan had picked the beans from was pushed aside. I couldn't see his expression, but I noticed his movement under the table to silence his phone. Then, I heard him say, "Ava, I have something to take care of. You go ahead and eat." I heard him stand up, and when I looked over, he had already stepped out of the shop. He even knew to walk consciously toward the blind spot nearby, and then I saw the woman follow him. If I didn't know better, I wouldn't have guessed there was a relationship between them. This scene was déjà vu. 3 years ago, Ethan's ex-girlfriend suddenly appeared in front of us, ignoring my existence completely. She walked straight up to Ethan and told him blatantly, "Ethan, I still like you. Let's get back together." Ethan told me the same thing then. "Ava, I'll go handle this." He left me there and walked forward without looking back. His ex-girlfriend trotted happily after him. She looked very certain that Ethan would make the choice she wanted. I had read many stories where love is defeated by the white moonlight, the one that got away. So psychologically, I didn't have much hope for myself. Ethan and I had lived quietly for 4 years, and his ex never appearing was the thing I was most satisfied with. But 4 years later, the return of the white moonlight scene played out anyway. Ethan still had to choose between us. I felt I had no chance of winning, so I thought for a long time about how to draft a message to my friend, telling her I had been dumped. But Ethan suddenly came back just as I started typing. My first sentence was, unexpectedly, "We broke up." So Ethan bent down, leaned close to my ear, and asked, "Ava, you don't want me anymore." I was startled, and the message sent. While I watched Ethan return and analyzed his expression and words to judge who won the choice, my friend immediately replied. Since I didn't answer right away, she voice called me. I answered, only to hear her loud voice asking, "Why did you break up? Did you dump him? Or did he dump you?" Who dumped whom was very important. It determined whether her next sentence would be praising me for a job well done dumping Ethan, or cursing that bastard Ethan to a horrible death for not cherishing me. I quickly explained it was a joke. Her voice immediately returned to its usual gentleness. "Ava, don't joke like that. I got so excited just now I scared away a handsome guy who was totally my type." After hanging up, I faced Ethan's questioning. He was smart. He knew why I thought that way. So he asked me, "Ava, why did you think I wouldn't choose you?" I mentioned those novels where the first love always wins. He laughed so hard he couldn't catch his breath and told me to read fewer of those stories. As for why he didn't solve it in front of me, he gave me an explanation. He said, "Ava, this is trouble I brought. I don't want to drag you into it." So I asked him, "Is it all resolved?" He told me with a proud expression, like he had done something worthy of praise. "Ava, you have to trust me." After that, I indeed never saw his ex-girlfriend again. We smoothly passed the 7-year itch. I thought nothing could defeat our relationship anymore, which is why I talked about marriage with Ethan. I didn't expect that it was my carelessness. I never noticed the lice crawling beneath the gorgeous robe. When Ethan returned this time, I didn't see the lake blue figure again. I never knew what means he used to handle such erratic emotions. Back then, he told me it was his trouble, and he didn't want to drag me in. Now, it was the same. So he kept his mouth shut about what he did outside, just sat naturally next to me and asked, "Are you full?" Then he glanced at the bowl of porridge I had pushed far away. He sighed, saying I was always like this, punishing my own body when I was angry with him. He wanted me to vent my anger on him. In the past, I would indeed do that, aiming to make Ethan submit and apologize, after which I would forgive him. But this time, it was different. I wasn't that angry with him. I just felt regret that a relationship of 7 years still couldn't reach a happy ending. As for not drinking the porridge he touched, it wasn't what he thought. I said, "Ethan, I feel dirty. Too dirty to eat." I rarely use such words on him. He sat frozen on the stool, completely motionless. Love ending not in sweet words, but in harsh insults. How tragic. I was woken up by the 3:00 a.m. alarm on my phone. It was pitch black outside. Lying in bed, I couldn't remember for a moment why I had set an alarm for this time. As the drowsiness faded, I finally remembered. Ethan and I had planned to drive to the airport at this time and fly to the city of Eternal Spring to celebrate getting our marriage license. Amid the busyness of that day, I had explained to friends and family that the marriage was off. I canceled all the reservations we made for after the registration. The only thing I missed was canceling the alarm. When planning this, both Ethan and I were excited. Ethan and I first met in that city. That day, I was talking on the phone with a friend in our dialect, and Ethan heard my voice in the crowd. He was involuntarily attracted by the familiar accent, so he followed me, and after I hung up, he came over to say hello. To this day, I don't know how to describe my meeting with Ethan. We lived in the same city but never met, yet our paths crossed in a foreign place. Even though this tourist city was bustling with traffic and people, and Ethan had been there for 3 days. Yet he only heard me speaking the dialect he knew. So at the beginning of our meeting, he affectionately called me villager. He came alone, and so did I. Upon asking, neither of us had a fixed itinerary. So for the latter half of that day's trip, Ethan and I stuck together. That journey was a good experience. The issues discussed online that tear couples apart during travel. Ethan and I passed those tests when we were still strangers. I met Ethan again on the plane. His seat wasn't far from mine, but since I never looked back, I didn't notice. When queuing to exit the cabin, Ethan stood behind me, and this time I noticed him. He greeted me politely, and we walked out chatting, until Ethan asked if anyone was coming to pick me up. He said, "My car is parked at the airport. I can drop you off." That day, we chatted about everything in the car, eventually mentioning a famous grilled fish restaurant near where I lived. I said, "Leave me your contact info. Pick a time this weekend, and I'll treat you." That's how Ethan and I became connected. As for when I fell in love, I don't know. Just one day, Ethan suddenly confessed to me. I thought he was nice, so I said we could try. Trying and trying. We spent 7 years together. 7 years. Such a long time. Ethan and I didn't plan to have a wedding, so this trip was essentially our honeymoon. When we set the honeymoon location in that city, Ethan was so excited he had insomnia. He even sent me a message in the middle of the night asking if we could go earlier. He said the sunrise in that city was beautiful, and he hadn't seen it with me yet. That's why I set the 3:00 a.m. alarm. At that time, I was busy with work, trying to secure more time off for the post-marriage holiday. But the vacation I worked myself to death to get, I had nothing to do with it now. I really couldn't stand staying home bored all day, so I decided to go to that city alone. I opened my phone and grabbed the last ticket on the earliest flight. I saw the sunrise from the plane. The sun burst forth, shining brilliantly, radiating endless light. My eyes and mind could only hold this magnificent view from high above. In that moment, everything else seemed unimportant, like the fact that Ethan was just a passerby in my life. Like the fact that this was just 7 years of my life. When my friend called, I was taking photos of the city's scenery with my camera. She told me with schadenfreude, "Ethan is going crazy looking for you." In our disrupted plans, Ethan knew nothing about me. My friend didn't ask where I went, just told me upon hearing the changing voices around me. "Ava, have fun. Beautiful scenery and food truly heal the heart." The sadness from 3 days ago began to dissipate bit by bit from the moment I saw the sunrise that day. I didn't expect to see the city's love patrol car again. 7 years ago, attracted by the vehicle covered in flowers, I was determined to get on and feel like a princess. But it only invited couples. So that day, I pulled Ethan, who was standing nearby, and whispered, "Can you pretend to be my boyfriend so I can go up and feel what it's like to be surrounded by flowers?" He said, "I'm tired anyway. Let's go up and rest." Ethan held my hand and led me onto the flower float. That day, more and more people got on. Ethan and I sat on the edge, taking the opportunity to gaze at the distant scenery. Then, Ethan pointed into the distance and asked me, "If you have no plans next, shall we go check that place out after the tour?" I was startled when I caught a flower thrown up by someone below. I looked over. The person waved at me and wished Ethan and me 100 years of harmony. I nodded guiltily, daring not to respond. At the end of the patrol, every couple had to get off holding hands amidst applause and cheers. This time, The people on the float pointed at me and the person beside me, waving for us to come up. I waved my hand, indicating they had the wrong pair, then stood below watching others enjoy the float treatment. I looked closely, perhaps because my memory wasn't deep. I felt that this year's float didn't have a single familiar face from 7 years ago. I thought, maybe they just didn't have time to come. The night I returned, I saw Ethan downstairs at my place. During this accumulated vacation time, while I took a Spiro-Themant solo trip, Ethan had been waiting here for me. Seeing me, Ethan told me with a hoarse voice that this was the cruelest revenge I could exact on him. I never thought to use my departure to prove how important I was to Ethan. As for the revenge he spoke of, I had never thought of that either. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone until now without thinking to hear the full story of his betrayal from his own mouth. I simply decided I didn't want him when I realized he wasn't the right match. Then I needed to do something to prevent this event from having too much negative impact on me. I left quietly, but in my absence, Ethan finally saw his true heart. He told me very sincerely, "Ava, I can't leave you. The days you were gone, I lived like a walking corpse. I was almost driven mad by the fear of losing you. I was a bit tired and didn't want to deal with Ethan's belated regret. When he had me, he wanted to possess someone else at the same time, never considering the consequences of being discovered. Now that he had lost me, he cried and talked about how he couldn't leave me, or how much he regretted it. It seemed like hypocrisy born of necessity. I replied coldly, "What does that have to do with me? Ethan, you were the one who forced me to leave. I didn't plan to celebrate my birthday this year." My friend bombarded me with calls early in the morning. Reading blessings, she searched online for a long time. I didn't remember any of it, only the address she sent later, saying she carefully arranged a special birthday party and telling me to be there on time. I had never seen so much lake blue. Every friend at the party was wearing various styles of lake blue coats. My all-black outfit, on the contrary, seemed out of place. Also out of place was the late-arriving Ethan. My friend whispered to me, "Ava, I specifically invited him, under the guise of celebrating your birthday. He wouldn't dare refuse." Thus, Ethan, who had dodged the criticism before, was caught red-handed today. The person executing the revenge Ethan spoke of had always been my friend. She was obsessed with using all things lake blue to sicken Ethan. So the day I left, when Ethan couldn't find me and called my friend, she said nothing, just laughed heartily. When she finally said, "Ethan, you deserve it," at the end of her laughter, Ethan had already hung up. Ethan was seated opposite me, separated by many people. He could only look at me but couldn't get close. All the games were targeted at Ethan. Making him drink became everyone's united goal. When Ethan's gaze became unfocused, my friend leaned in and asked him, "Ethan, who is that woman?" Ethan only said, "There is no other woman." My friend shouted to continue, saying Ethan wasn't drunk yet, wearing a birthday hat. I sat there quietly watching the show my friend arranged. Ethan cast pleading looks at me, but I couldn't help him, because when I stepped into the room, my friend whispered two things to me. One was an apology, saying today might be an unhappy birthday. The other was begging me to let her vent her anger thoroughly. Everyone had planned to give red envelopes to Ethan and my future children. His actions seemed to hurt everyone. In the end, it was still about making Ethan confess what kind of coat it was. Friends kept walking up to Ethan, testing his reaction. He was already somewhat drunk, yet he could still control his facial expressions. Even though my friend paraded that identical coat in front of him all night, his face remained unchanged. I stared at my friend's coat for a long time, long enough for Ethan to notice my gaze. Then I saw the shock and brokenness in his eyes. He must have realized that I, too, had seen the woman in the lake blue coat standing outside the window that day. During the wish-making segment, I said, "I wish for things between us and Ethan to end here. For me and Ethan. And for my friends and Ethan, to end here. For the impact of this event to end here." And then we returned to being strangers. Ethan didn't say a word, silently listening to my wish. In the end, he left before they could even sing the birthday song. The trip where I met Ethan 7 years ago was a birthday gift to myself. Then Ethan and I had a beginning. On this birthday, I decided to separate from Ethan and live a life without him from now on. Just like the feeling of seeing the sunrise on the plain. The world is vast and colorful. Ethan wasn't important enough that my world would collapse without him. I am grateful for his presence, and I have made peace with his departure. I believe everything is the best arrangement.